Dream like a kid who hasn't discovered limits. This past week on my For You page, that quote came up and I actually ended up sharing it to my Instagram stories. But the reason why it lingered with me and it sat with me is because over the past several weeks now, the phrase hold the vision has been at the forefront of my mind more often than not. And there's a question that I want to ask you today as I start off with this video and we talk about holding the vision, as Habakkuk says, see the vision, grab hold of it and run with it, do not tarry. And the question I want to ask you that I asked myself is how often are you given a vision for something extraordinary? Something that would stretch you beyond your current level of comfort zone and capacity, but then you begin slowly cutting pieces off of it and shrinking it down until it fits the life that you currently know and are familiar with. How often do we shrink our dreams to fit our circumstances rather than expanding ourselves to fit that dream? And I want to read you something from my book, You Are Art. And it says, Jeremiah 2:13, this is in chapter 3, by the way. My people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters and hewed out cisterns, broken cisterns that can hold no water. And for a while, if I'm being honest, I never really knew what hewed out meant until recently. Until recently, I thought it meant like they threw something away, like a grandma doing some spring cleaning in her house, throwing out a citron she no longer wanted. But hewing means to cut or shape something, usually with heavy blows from a tool like an axe. It's rough, aggressive, and leaves behind something chiseled but unfinished. But isn't that what many of us do with our dreams? We're given a vision, we're given a dream, we're given a glimpse of a possibility and a reality that is greater than our current circumstances, and it's great. At first we feel energized and we're like, oh, wouldn't this be amazing? Wouldn't this be cool? And then fear picks up a chisel and doubt picks up a hammer, and then little doubt and worry and past failures start to creep in. And then if we talk about these dreams to other people, then other people's opinions start to speak over that. And little by little, we carve away pieces of that dream and vision until we have reduced it to something that feels safe, something that feels manageable and realistic, but not necessarily something that's true. And that also reminds me of a Bible story. And I talked about this in my Law of Mentalism video. If you haven't seen that, I will link that up there for you. And it's Peter walking on water. That is one of my favorite stories about holding the vision. And in this story, Peter steps out onto the water. And for a moment, all is well because his vision is fixed on what? It's fixed on Jesus, which is the representation of our higher consciousness because he was an archetype for us to embody. And all is going well. The storm is still happening. The uncertainty and the fear and the doubt, it is whipping around him. But Peter is walking just fine on water until what? Until he sees the wind. But you can't see wind until he sees the fear and the doubt and the limitations, and those start pulling him back to his old identity. And then he begins sinking. And then what does Jesus say to him in the story, in this parable? Ye of little faith. And that is not a rebuke, but it's a questioning of why. Why did you have doubt? You were walking on the water. Nothing changed besides your beliefs of what was possible, besides your vision and your focus. You let go of the vision and you turned your vision from the purity of the holiness of the higher place of consciousness, and you looked onto the fear and the doubt. You looked onto the worry. And how often do we also do that? We get this vision, and then we turn our focus onto the debt, onto the limits, on, oh, that's a really big number that we want to earn. I don't know if that's possible. I don't know if I can do that. Look at those few negative comments that people got onto me. Oh, people are going to hate me. Oh, what if I fail? What if this is cringe? And we start focusing on the worry. We're focusing on the lack, on the limitations, on the doubt, on the external circumstances of what these eyes currently see, rather than keeping the vision up here with our spiritual eye. And when you remove your focus from the vision onto people's opinions and the limitations, you very much start sinking back into the limitations that you are attempting to transcend. And that is why Jesus constantly said to have faith like what? Faith like a child. We're not supposed to have faith like an adult because adults have very much been indoctrinated with limiting beliefs and ideas about how the world should be. Oh, that's unrealistic. Oh, that's not logical. Oh, that's not reality. That doesn't make sense. And all too often, we sink into a sleep, into our egoic minds, and we allow the things that we see out here with these eyes to transcend our understanding of what we're supposed to be seeing with this eye. But even in tarot, when you understand the journey of the mystic's path, the soul's journey of the major secrets, the major arcana, one of the cards is the sun. And it says, success lies ahead if you keep to the path. And on that picture is a child riding a white horse of purity, of pure consciousness. And the child is holding up a banner in that picture. A small child is holding up this giant red, fiery, passionate banner for life. And that is because you can be strong in your faith and have the innocence of a child and have a childlike faith that you do. You believe without limits and you dream without limits. But why children? Why should we have faith like a child? Because children naturally possess the ability to dream. You didn't have to be taught how to dream like a child. You did. You naturally picked up things and you created new things with them. You took Play-Doh and you molded it. You took Lego blocks and you built it. You took paint or markers and you painted something. You had an imagination. As a child, you probably had dreams. One day I'm going to be an astronaut. One day I'm going to be the president of the United States. One day I'm going to do XYZ. I'm going to be an Olympian. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be in the Hall of Fame. That's actually a really good song, The Hall of Fame. I loved listening to that song as a kid. Either way, back on topic. You had dreams. But then as you slowly got older, people slowly kept making comments and you slowly started accepting beliefs to be true for yourself. Oh, that's not realistic. You'll be lucky if you sell 3 books of your first book that you publish. Oh, if you wanted to be an Olympian, you should have started 16 years ago. That's not for people like you. How are you going to do that? You don't have that kind of money. But a child doesn't dream and then immediately calculate all the possibilities of reasons why it won't work. They simply believe. Now, adults might look at a child and say that they're naive, but mystics call that very much creative power because your pineal gland is very much active and alive with imagination. And when you use it, you continually strengthen that. And that's also another thing. When you understand, let's say, going back to tarot cards, they very much talk about the soul's journey and having the wisdom in the built identity of strong faith on 3 levels, not just in the physical realm, not just being strong with a physical strength, but being strong with a mental strength and also being strong with a spiritual strength. You have many gifts and abilities, but a lot of us aren't taught to harness and to use those and to refine those spiritual ones or even mental ones. So a lot of people, they only rely on their physical strengths of what they cannot and cannot do, and the logical aspect of things of, well, I can do this and I can do that and I can work hard for my money and there we go. But most people forget that they also possess a mental strength and that their mind is not very much tamed. But the greatest work you'll ever do is working on your mind, and mastery of self is mastering your mind and also mastering your spiritual gifts, because you possess many spiritual gifts and abilities. Those are the gifts and mysteries given to you that God would reveal unto you, which is Christ in you, your hope of glory. Because when you realize you've been given that anointing, you go from the fool to the magician. And then you start learning the wisdom and trusting your gut and realizing not all things can be taught through a book. You know, the scribes have lied because words are just dead. If you don't actually apply it, it's useless to you. You can read as many books as you want in life, but if you don't actually live it out, it does you nothing. Because faith isn't pretending something already exists physically. Faith is remaining loyal to a vision before the physical evidence arrives. Because faith is about identity and becoming. Faith is believing that you are able and that you are possible and that you are somebody who has done it. And therefore you walk in that. Because also in the Gita, faith, known as Shraddha, is described as one of the foundations of human identity. And Lord Krishna in the stories goes on to say, a man consists of the faith that is in him. Whatever his faith is, that is what he becomes. Not what he possesses, not what he posts online, not what he says he believes or quotes to become a member of a church. But it is what he places his faith in, because faith is not merely the belief of the unseen. Faith is the lens through which you interpret reality and ultimately what you become. Because if you believe something to be true, you're going to take action in it, because action is the greatest form of belief. That's why faith without works is dead. If you just say, oh yeah, I believe this is true, but you do nothing about it, then it's just a belief. And even the demons believe. Because you can believe anything, but to know it, to embody it, to walk in it, to harness that identity is a completely different game than just believing in something. Faith is ultimately your internal compass. It is the organizing principle behind your choices, your habits, your actions, and ultimately your life. If your faith is rooted in fear, you will become fearful. If your faith is rooted in scarcity, you will become scarce. And if your faith is rooted in limitation, you begin building a life that reflects those limitations. Now switch that out for identity. If your identity is rooted in fear, you're going to be a fearful person. Your identity is rooted in scarcity and poverty and poor mindset, you're going to be a scarce, poverty, poor-filled person. And poverty is a disease of the mind. But if your faith is rooted in possibility, in courage, in love, in growth, let the weak say that I am strong. That's what the book of Joel says. You become a person capable of expressing those qualities into the world. That is why faith is so powerful, because faith isn't simply what you believe. Faith is what you repeatedly agree with. Faith is what you ultimately become. By your faith, by your identity, you take on, be it unto you. What you repeatedly agree with will eventually become your identity, and that is ultimately the law of mentalism, also known in psychology terms of what you consistently hold in your mind begins shaping the self. The images you hold, the stories you repeat, the assumptions you make about yourself and the world, the beliefs you take on. If you believe that God has only terms and conditions of conditional love towards you, you're going to live your life very much fearful. You're going to be afraid to make mistakes, to be curious because you've been taught to fear it. But if you believe that life itself, the divine, what you might call God, is just all loving and all knowing and is your higher self and you're interconnected with it, you learn to have a lot more love for yourself than you do. You go through life a lot more confident in your step because you realize that curiosity is a good thing, that you can test and discern and see and hold fast to what is true, and you don't need to be afraid of everything. You don't have fear of going to burn in hell for living your life and being and embodying your energy to the complete fullest, because you realize that hell is just theology made up by men to control people. That religion sadly has become just control systems because Rome never went away. It just rebranded itself as Christianity. Because those stories and those beliefs and those assumptions that you continually think about, if you're constantly thinking about debt and being in scarcity and lack, they become the architecture for the house that you build, for the life that you are creating. And every extraordinary life requires you to become somebody that you've never been before. And that's uncomfortable. I get it. But the level of consciousness, the vision that you had in the past, yes, it was very much needed to get you to this point. But the level of consciousness that got you to this point is not going to be the level of consciousness that takes you into the promised land, that takes you into your next season. The vision that you're given now in this current moment that is bigger than your current capacity is going to require you to become somebody new. See forth, do you not perceive it? I am doing a new thing in you. In the spirit, life itself constantly wants to grow you and expand you. And that's going to be uncomfortable sometimes. Sometimes it's going to feel like the end of the world is happening. But that's also part of the soul's journey. One of the cards is death. Death very much is seen as an evil thing, especially through the Western lens, but death is neutral. And death is needed not only in the physical realm, but in the spiritual and the mental realm. The ego needs to die, it needs to shed, and it needs to birth something new. And that is why death, the Grim Reaper, is neutral, and it holds up a white flag because it's there. It's saying, hey, I'm here to take you into the next season. And then you keep going on that journey. And you might have things that you're holding on to. You, like a tarot card with the devil, might be bound by limitations and beliefs that are keeping you chained up. Realities that you have assumed to be true for yourself, and that's why I can't have that vision that you need to let go of. And you need to let go of those mirages, of those false things that you're still holding on to and that you're believing and you're submitting yourself to and bowing to outside of yourself. Because if not, you're going to stay chained up and you're going to stay trapped in that little black cube and you're not going to become the person that you want to be. You're not going to go on to that promised land. You're not going to create what you want to create, which means you're probably not going to feel very fulfilled in your life. And you might lie to yourself for a while of, oh, I'm content where I am. I've got a good house, a good family. I've got a good stable job. I'm happy. I'm doing what I was supposed to do, you know? My parents said I needed to go to college. I needed to do this. I needed to have that. I'm successful by the world standards. But if you gain the world, you lose your soul. And you're supposed to be loyal to yourself and to the vision that has been given to you by your higher self, also known as the divine source, life, God, whatever terminology you want to use. And that vision is what the world needs you to create. That is the vision the world needs you to bring forth and to birth and to create beauty in this world, to bring heaven down on earth. You're not doing the world any good holding back from the vision that you've been called to create, that you long to create, that your inner child gets joyful at the thought of dreaming about. Vision will always call you forward and not backwards. Vision will always take you to places that you haven't been before, and it requires you to not look back, to leave the old land behind and to walk forth in faith, which will require something old being released so something new can be emerged. And usually that is the death of an old identity. The fearful self must make room for the courageous self. The doubting self must die so that way the trusting self can emerge. The limited self must make room for the expanded self. And this is where most people quit. Not because the vision was wrong, but because becoming the person capable of holding the vision feels uncomfortable. And they don't want to do the work. They don't want to sit through the emotions of the uncomfortableness. They'd rather just accept their current state that feels safe. They'd rather just go back to the nervous system that's currently regulated for their current capacity. They don't want to have to do the breath work for 5 minutes a day, 3 times a day to regulate their nervous system and have that parasympathetic state heal their body. They'd rather stay in fight or flight mode. They want to avoid and shortcut the becoming. Every transformation begins with leaving a familiar identity behind. Because faith is holding on to the vision while you are still becoming the person who is capable of fully embodying it to the deepest roots of your reality. It is the willingness to keep walking before the evidence arrives, to keep creating before the results appear, and to keep believing before the harvest comes. To see the vision and hold on to it with so much faith that you can say to that mountain, move, and it will throw itself into the sea. And the moment that you truly begin holding that vision and you stay holding that vision begins reshaping you. And it starts to slowly rearrange your outer reality because it's rearranging your inner reality, and your outer reality reflects your inner state. And that's also where people sometimes will give up holding the vision because they'll start to see things fall apart out here. They'll be like, whoa, these relationships are ending. Oh my God, I just lost my job. What the hell's happening? My life's falling apart. That's a good sign. Yeah, it's going to be hella scary and uncomfortable in the moment because you don't have certainty. But faith is the opposite of certainty. It still holds on to the things yet not seen. It holds on to that vision of, you know what? I don't know the how, but I do know the what and the why, and I'm going to hold on to it because I have faith and I have confidence that life is going to see me through, that life takes care of the wildflowers out in the fields that nobody's ever seen, so life's going to take care of me because I am life's child. And maybe that's one of the reasons why the phrase hold the vision keeps returning to me. Because I know the moment I abandon that vision, I return to the limitations that created my current reality. And I'm not supposed to stay the same. I'm not supposed to be stagnant in my growth. I'm supposed to keep going on. There will never be, oh, this was my peak years. Every day is the best day yet to come. And therefore, I'm going to continue to become bigger and better and go on to do greater things. I'm going to hold the vision. And yeah, at times it's fucking scary. The doubt doesn't just magically go away. But that doesn't mean I have to water down the vision that has been gifted to me to make myself comfortable. Because I'm still then doing a disservice to myself and to that vision. And I'm not then being a good steward of what has been given to me to create and bring into the world. So if I can leave you with anything today, it's that my hope for you is that you would dream like a kid who has yet to discover limits. That you would see that vision, that dream that you have inside of yourself, and you would bring it back to life, and you would hold it with respect and reverence and realize that vision was not given to the person you are today, but it was given to the person who you're becoming. And that you would protect it from your own doubts, from your own worries, and from your own fears, and you would protect it from other people's criticism. And you would have enough respect and belief in yourself to realize that you are 100% capable and worthy of that vision and dream, and that it was given to you to create, and therefore you are qualified to walk in that.